Hello, Mark Curry here. There are lots of words that I could use to describe our current health situation or our health crisis. Weird, surreal, strange, unbelievable. But as far as our industry is concerned, the business that we call show business, the word is uncertain. None of us, performers, people who are working in the theatre backstage, front of house, people who are working in television, technicians, none of us know when we will be working again. And those of us who don't know when we're working again, but who are lucky enough to have some financial security, can get through this period. But there are lots of people who are not quite so fortunate. And right now is a very difficult time for them. So I wanted to do my bit. And I'm putting together a series of conversations called Conversations with Mark Curry, with some famous faces, some of them mates, some people that you'll know, I'm sure. Just chatting to them about their lives, their careers, what they're doing now, their plans on hold because of this situation. And it would be great if you could enjoy those interviews and those conversations. But what would be really wonderful would be if at the end of watching those conversations, you could hit the donate button and just give whatever you can, which would really help performers, workers in theatre and television who are going through this very, very difficult time. So it's really easy. Sit back, enjoy it. And then when you finish watching, just go to the Acting for Others website, hit the donate button, and you'll be taken immediately to the Just Giving page. It's really simple. Just give as little or as much as you can. Thanks so much for watching. My guests on my conversation today are two people who I know very well because we were a Blue Peter trio back in the 80s. Peter Duncan started his career as an actor. He was part of the National Theatre in the 1970s. On television, he appeared in things like Warship and Space 1999 and Play for Today. His films include Flash Gordon and what else, and Stardust as well. He's been nominated for an Olivier Award. He's a former Chief Scout. Janet Ellis appeared on television in 1978 in Jack and Nori. She joined the BBC children's programme Jigsaw. She's presented BBC's Open Air. She's been a regular panellist on Channel 5's The Right Stuff. She's written 2 novels. One of her children is the globally successful vocalist Sophie Ellis Baxter, and together they are 2 of the most popular and well-known Blue Peter presenters, Janet Ellis and Peter Duncan, and here they are. Hello.
I think you were thinking of Biddy Baxter there, weren't you? From
Bextor.
That's complicated.
Oh, hello, you two. It's great to see you.
A sunny day in Eastbourne, no doubt.
It is a lovely day in Eastbourne. What's it like where you are? I take it you're in Wimbledon Park Road, are you, Peter?
I am. Oh, yes, that's on that painting, isn't it? Yes. That was a painting of another superstar, though I'm not allowed to say who it is. No, I've been in the garden today. I got some Shirley tomatoes delivered, lovely tomatoes. So they're going out in the garden later on after our chat.
Lovely. So you're coping. What about you, Janet? Are you coping with this weird situation we're in?
Well, we're still here, and you know the flowers help. Yeah, it is weird, isn't it? In fact, I don't know whether you're counting it in weeks or days. The world seems to divide, and the people with the day count, it does sound very alarming. So I'm ignoring that. I'm just thinking, oh, what's another month?
Yeah, I'm not even counting it, to be honest. I'm just trying to stay in the moment. I really am.
Stick in the stream.
Yeah. Have you both had any projects interrupted? I know you have, Peter, haven't you? A couple of plays?
Yeah, no, I was doing a little tour of a play called The Dame, written by my daughter, about a pantomime dame, and I just started doing $1 Million Quartet, and we went to Mumbai for a couple of weeks, and the day we left, or 2 days after we left there, they hit lockdown, and then we did a week in Southampton and one night in Southend, which sounds like a dodgy film, doesn't it? But and then we were shut down. That was it. That was 8 weeks ago.
So how long would that have carried on for? Had it not?
Oh, till the end of June, beginning of July. Long time.
Right, right, okay. But The Dame is something that can happen again, and probably the musical can as well. Yeah? Will it start again?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think Theatreland, as you know, is in a terrible sort of dilemma, really, because some, producers want to produce, and theatres, some of them want to open, some of them are running out of money, and it's all a bit desperate because nobody knows quite when they can start everything else. Other businesses, it's a bit easier, but Theatreland is tricky because of the simple idea that lots of people in a small space close together, some who are very fearful, some who are a bit gung-ho, and, it has to add up economically. So if a theatre can't play to the numbers it requires to pay for the show, then they ain't going to do it.
Yeah. Janet, have you had anything interrupted by this?
Sort of interrupted, yeah. The paperback of my second novel came out in April, and normally that's quite a big hoopla, and obviously I go and not only admire it in bookshops, move it to the front of the pile, wherever I am. And
I would do that. I absolutely would do that.
And I love it the way you pay us to go and buy 5 copies. It's very sweet.
Whatever it takes. And there were a couple of things I was involved in. But one thing that I thought would go by the board was one of those Channel 5, you know, when kids' TV goes wrong. And I'd been asked to do it and then thought, well, that takes care of that. But no, they sent a camera to the house, a sanitized camera, and I had to self-op with a green screen in my actual sitting room. I know. Which is why I am categorically not a camera operator, because even though they said they were sending really clear instructions, most of my time was taken up with just putting the thing on the tripod and anything else.
I find it so nerve-wracking, I really do. I mean, luckily with this, my lovely friend Andy Barker is hosting it, as you know, and sorting it all out. But I just freak out. You're quite good on this though, Pete, aren't you?
I do, yeah. I love because when I used to make my travel docs, I got into those early days of Final Cut Pro, and when cameras got very small, and they turned to digital. And I've been actually just the last couple of days looking at an iPhone, and a lot of people now edit on iPhones or on their iPads, and there's a whole sort of a generation, not my generation. There's a whole load of people.
Very professional microphone that you've got there. Just
well, can you see? Is it crept back in?
No,
very unprofessional.
No, it's not.
Oh, there it is.
Love to see it.
No.
Look at the size of that. I'm very impressed.
Yes, very good. Yes, so we panto. It's not panto season. There's not going to be a panto season.
It's always a panto. It's always a panto when we get together. But it is.
Yes, no, I quite like. I think brain-wise, technical stuff. I'm just laying some stuff down on my old Final Cut, some old sort of digital films that I took, and of course, your brain forgets it, and very slowly, as you solve each problem, it all comes back. So it's quite a good. It's a good mind game to play.
Yeah.
Technical stuff.
Well, I was just going to say that it's just lovely that it's us three together, and we were together in Blue Peter back in the 80s. For those people who don't know what Blue Peter is, it just might be somebody watching. How would Janet Ellis describe Blue Peter to us?
Blue Peter is a twice-weekly children's magazine show, in our day always live. I think actually now live. I think actually now, yeah. Although with the current interventions, they might be having to do a bit more recording than normal. Which had mainly an idea that it would be entertaining, but it was subversively educating as well, but definitely in that order. Always 3 presenters, always lots of pets, and a whole panoply of enthusiasts ready to share whatever it was they were keen on with the viewing public.
And of course, in our day, the viewing public was sometimes between 6 and 7 million.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And a cross-section of people as well, because it was on just before the news on BBC One. Yeah. We got lots of older people watching, and the whole family used to tune into it. So we were lucky, really, weren't we?
Oh, really? Yes. Yeah. Because even by the time I joined, the programme had been on air for 25 years, and it's 62 this year, isn't it? Yeah. 62. Yeah. So it was already an institution by the time all of us joined it, and pretty much set in stone, it has to be said. But no bad thing. Quite easy to join in.
And Peter, I said that you were acting. You were a serious actor, and by that I mean, it really was your career. You were really going for it. So how did it come your way? Even I don't know this. How did Blue Peter come your way?
Well, I've been an actor for 11 years. And I think when, it's a story I've often told, but when John Noakes was about to leave, I did a kids series on BBC with Leslie Manville, my girlfriend at the time. And it was called King Cinder, about Speedway. And we were on sort of primetime kids TV. In other words, that was the kids TV drama series that people were watching. And then Biddy kind of called me up and said, would you audition? And I sort of tripped along, bounced on the trampoline, made something up with glitter and a bit of cardboard. And then she offered me the job and I turned it down. And then
you turned it down?
Later, yeah, the first time, yeah, to take over from Noakesy, yeah, because I was a sort of a daring do type and I loved the idea of venture. She soon discovered that I'd had a very poor education when I finally did accept 2 years later. And spent a lot of time. It's funny, there's a former editor called Richard Marston, who was a lovely guy, and he wrote a book and about every program that went out for about 25 years. And in this book, there's always like Biddy's comment. And I don't know if either of you got this book, but it's hysterically funny because at the end of my first program, it says Biddy's comment, and it said, ho hum, which I just thought is, so could be anything. And then there was the really insulting.
After all of us, to be honest.
But then a lot of very insulting stuff is talking absolute rubbish. And then you search desperately for a rare compliment, which you have to sort of like 2 years in, you might get a compliment.
I never got a compliment.
And you were always perfect. It's us.
But I never got a compliment. I never got a compliment.
We are talking
I think that was part of, I don't know, the kind of rigor of it and the charm is that we were never told this is the best you can be, just relax on that. There was always another program, wasn't there? There was always a fresh idea and, a new way of presenting it. So we could never get complacent, which is...
And we are talking about Biddy Baxter. Biddy Baxter, the editor of Blue Peter. She really was in charge. She wasn't head of children's programs, but Blue Peter was absolutely her baby in more ways than one. She lived, breathed, ate, slept it for 24 hours a day. She was our editor. I think we all would agree that she was pretty brilliant at her job.
Yes.
Energy was incredible. She always had a plan B. She was there for you, but sometimes if you were a bit tired, you just couldn't be. You had to be living.
Yeah.
Janet, how did it come your way then?
I had been acting for 5 years because I'm classically trained, so obviously it took me a bit longer to get going. And I was doing a kids series called Jigsaw, and there were bits when, because it was a puzzle competition thing, there were bits when I used to say at the beginning and end, sort of summary and where to send your entries, that kind of thing. And people started saying to me, oh, you could be a presenter, which I found hugely insulting, hugely. Because, actress, actually.
Trained, as you said,
Completely.
Central, no less. Central school.
And then began to think, there's planted a seed, definitely, began to think, well, maybe I could just do a bit, instead of, just waiting for acting work all the time. Maybe I could do both. And my agent at the time, who I know you know, Mark, Annie Sweetbound from Arlington, another legend, said to me, oh, actually, someone's leaving from Blue Peter. And she bet me £5 I'd get it, which was a lot of money in those days. And actually, I don't know about you, because all of us have an acting background, right? So we all understood that. We all understood the fact that it was live felt familiar. The fact that the time frame might have been a lot shorter. You don't normally just get a day to learn something or 2 hours sometimes. But we had to learn our script, and so there was something quite familiar about it, weirdly familiar about it. It was the closest to acting that any presenting can be, given that none of us were journalists and none of us set out to be presenters at all.
I think I was drawn to it partly because I liked, after being an actor for 11 years, there was something very, focused on being an actor, as actors tend to be. And there was something about the Blue Peter thing which still retained some of the showbiz element and the performing stuff, which I know we all like to do. But also there was the travel, and there was this idea of being part journalist as well and part someone who was a communicator. And all that stuff, especially because I had such a sort of fragmented education, that, the idea that I might be required to pass on information reliably filled me with joy. And I thought, well, perhaps I should have a go at this. So eventually I kind of succumbed to the lure of being a permanent employee of the BBC.
I auditioned for the rival programme on ITV, a thing called CBTV, and I got offered it, and I hadn't heard from Blue Peter because I think they still had other auditions to do. So I rang Biddy, who I'd met I think twice, and I said, I've got a problem now. I've been offered this other job. Can you let me know? I couldn't do that now to save my life. It's extraordinary, isn't it? How
I bet she wanted you even more, but she knew you'd been offered another job.
Probably, yeah. Well, whatever. But it's just funny, isn't it? That the idea of just bringing somebody up and saying, I know this is like, the flagship children's program of all time, but could you just, I've got to put some washing on, so could you just tell me whether or not I've got the gig because I'm busy? It is weird. But your route in was quite similar too, wasn't it? Because Baxter had spotted you. and wanted you to do it, Mark, and you said no as well.
Well, I didn't say no straight away. What happened was, I was doing a Saturday morning show called Saturday Picture Show with lovely Cheryl Baker, and I was having such a great time. I really loved it, and obviously I'd watched Blue Peter, but it was never sort of, I want to do that show. It just wasn't part of my plan at all. So I was doing pantomime with John Noakes in Manchester at the time, and the head of children's programmes, Edward Barnes, phoned me before a matinee and said, Simon Groom is leaving. We want somebody to take over who the kids know. Would you do it? And I actually said to him something like, well, I can't talk about it now because I've got a matinee to do. And I went to the theatre. I thought, anybody else would be jumping up and down about this.
I know, really.
What did he tell you? What did he tell you when you told him you've been? What did he say to you?
What, when he offered me the job?
No, Noakes. When you finally told Noakes what?
Oh, John Noakes. We'd never talked about Blue Peter at all during our rehearsals for the panto and during the first week. We were in the first week of the run, and we hadn't talked about Blue Peter because somebody had said to me, he feels a little bit bitter about it. He's not full of, don't get him talking about it because he'll go on forever. So I avoided it. I absolutely avoided it. I think we all did, all the cast did. Remember, Les Dawson was in it and John Nettle. It was a great pantomime. So we were all having a good time. But this day, I couldn't resist saying to him, this matinee, guess what? I said in the wings. I've just been offered Blue Peter. Oh, and he just went on a long time about why I shouldn't do it.
I bet Les Dawson said, go on, get down, Shep.
I didn't tell anybody else.
That's so weird, isn't it?
Yeah. How did you find it? Peter, when Janet joined, you were with Simon Groom and Sarah Green, of course, wonderful Sarah Green. So you were a very established team, and suddenly someone new comes along. And then Janet and Peter, you were with Simon, you were an established team, and I came along. How did you find that sort of saying goodbye to somebody who you'd worked with and loved and got on really well, and then somebody new coming in? It's a different dynamic, isn't it?
Well, Pete?
It is a bit. It's like being an actor in a play, isn't it? Sometimes the best stuff comes from when it kind of works. So you have to put energy into that, and you have to trust each other and enjoy it. And that, I think it's the same kind of principle. I mean, I have to say, when I joined with Sarah and Simon, they were running quite well without me, really. I was a bit of a fly in the ointment, to be honest. I was never trusted with a sentence with more than 10 words in it. So it took me a while to get going. I was always good, if I was going to jump off something or climb up something, but the getting the words in the right order was I don't know why I do myself down. I'm perfectly articulate now. It just took a while, really. So, and people have different skills. I mean, Janet, you were always the queen of wit to me. You always used to make me laugh so much, probably for the wrong reasons sometimes. And because me and you, Mark, we had very similar backgrounds, and we, anything show business, it was a battle to find the spotlight, wasn't it, darling?
So funny, yeah. But it's funny, isn't it? Because I think the very thing that we all, as adults joining a children's programme, the very thing that we often kicked against, which was the structure, was the thing that kept it on air. And you must have, I know, I'm endlessly asked. First of all, I'm asked, is it still on? Which I find a bit sad. So we put quite a lot of effort into that 60th year, making sure everyone knew. Anyway, it's still on, and it's still brilliant. And, they're doing a really good job now because they're kind of self-helping as well. But people always said, why do you think it lasted? And grudgingly, the reason I have to give is that it didn't change. It didn't change. It just stayed down the lens to those 8 to 12-year-olds. And with a programme that's been that long, the temptation to kind of nudge a bit to the endless, appreciation societies in university, or the dads watching or whatever, there was none of that. There was none of that. It just absolutely focused on the child watching.
People knew what they were getting, basically.
Yeah.
They knew what they were getting.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is great, because when you're a kid, you want that. I mean, of course you want difference within that, and that's what you get with different presenters. But there's something very reassuring about that fixed structure, and more so for us, I think, because we, again, this was before. The revolution now is to make everything quicker, and I don't think it's less good, the content, but it certainly hits you faster. And we had time, you know, we would do 7 or 8 minute films, which now when you tell people that, they go, what, in one, you know, because they would break that up into little sections and then they'd trail from one section to the other in case they lost you the first time. So we were allowed to take things more slowly within that structure, which again was great because it meant that we all could be ourselves. You know, we had longer to do it in, basically, without the lack of trust that the viewer would switch over to the other 5 million channels that are available.
I remember.
And it was innovative in so many ways that it did the, you know, it had the appeals which took you to other countries, which kind of was started a genre of itself. And also the content was king, really, then. You know, that they found interesting to do and often repeated the good things as well.
Totally.
For the next generation of kids. So it was the effort. And Billy always used to go on about the, you know, the not only the communication through the lens, but also having a huge correspondence unit, so that if a kid wrote in, they got a proper answer about a question or can this come on? You know,
and there was some statistic, wasn't there, about something like 75% of every program was viewer led or viewer suggested, which is pretty big. Pretty big.
And also, they
remember that campaign, Mark, when they said, "Let's get rid of Mark Curry," and we all ignored it. We didn't. We wanted you to stay. You know, I started
that.
That explains it.
I remember being very scared that I would be asked to do something very brave, and I think I said when I finally accepted the job, I said, "Look, if you want John Noakes, if you want somebody jumping out the planes like you did, Janet, or being strapped to the hands of Big Ben like you did, Peter." Just forget it. I was really terrified.
Oh, I don't remember that.
But you two both embraced it, Peter, particularly you. And I've said this to you. I cannot believe some of the stuff you did. And in Edinburgh a couple of years ago, when we did that play, and on stage you could see some of the clips, and one clip of you dangling on Big Ben, and you're about to clean the hands of the clock, and there's no safety net or anything. I just could not believe it, but you just did it.
Yeah, it was the first day on the job, but I was a bit keen. But yes, the physical risks I've always enjoyed. You know, as being a sporty type, and I've always there's a thrill. It's a climbing a mountain thing. It's, can you run that fast? Can you hang on to that? So all that stuff has always interested me, and still does, even as an old man. It's I still enjoy beating my son at table tennis, you know, because he hasn't beat me the last days, and he's in a fury, storms out the house. It's terrible, really terrible behavior.
Did you do anything that you really were scared about, or you didn't want to do, looking back?
Well, no, I think when we had that kind of spin-off thing of doing dares, Duncan dares as they were called, you could then concentrate a bit more on taking a bit longer to learn a skill, you know, so therefore you could train for something or do something a bit quirky that took a bit longer. So that was a bit more interesting. But, you know, as Blue Peter presenters, you'd often have to turn up and, you know, in an afternoon, you're going to tightrope walk, or you're going to swing on the trees. You didn't have long to learn, you know.
No. In fact, the only film I ever refused to do was going down to clean lichen off a dam. And it was about that. It was, you know, sort of ecological thing. But the only access to the dam was by abseiling. And I said, "Oh, is that going to be filmed?" And they said, no. The point of the thing, I mean, we'll do a bit, you know, basically it's about cleaning this dam. And I said, I've never done it. I've always had a horror of abseiling anyway. And I thought, I don't just want that to be the way I get to location. You know, if we're going to make a film about abseiling, it's got to be absolutely about that. Because it really made me scared. So that's the only
one. So if you fall, you would be on camera, you know.
Yeah. But also it's just, as you said with Duncan Dares, you know, you had time to learn something. And this, I thought, no, this would just be people going, you know, we need to be there now. Can you? But I did take over one film from Simon, actually, who got all the way to, not far from where he lives now, to the cable cars at Abraham Heights at Matlock.
Yes.
And he was going to film a cable car rescue, where you climb out through the roof of the cable car and hook yourself onto the wire above and winch down. And Simon got there and went, no. So I went.
That would have been me. I would have said no. I'm actually getting tingling in a certain place now, just thinking about that.
Yeah, so I went and filmed it.
You did it.
I'm thinking that film with Richard Burton where eagles dare. I'd have done it.
Of course you would. Of course you would. I was genuinely surprised by the power of the programme. I underestimated that completely. I just couldn't believe it because I've been doing quite a bit of television. I just didn't think it was. Don't get me wrong. I was blasé about being offered the job, but I did underestimate just how big a deal it was. It was like I'd never done anything before when I suddenly got that and doors opened and people talked about it and they were so excited that I was doing it. They were more excited than I was.
Absolutely. And their mothers and fathers have been excited, you know, so everybody got handed it down, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah.
And still, people are still of a certain generation. They're always very enthusiastic. You know, they've all got kids now, and lots of grey hair. But
Absolutely, they are. Yeah. No,
So we
really,
talked about it being live, which of course was part of the excitement, wasn't it? Really, that it was live. So if you have to look back and think, everybody asks this, don't they? But I'm asking you now. If you had to think of one show where it went wrong that you'll never forget, can you think about that, Janet?
Well, do you know all the things that went wrong for me, and this is more my psyche than anyone else's, were so small that to the viewer, or if I said them now, people would go, well, that's fine. But I hated not being able to remember what I was going to say. I hated not being, you know, we used to have to count down into a film, and you knew that someone in the gallery was waiting just to push a button when you said the right word. They weren't necessarily listening to what you were saying, and if you didn't say the right word, everything was, you know, buggered because you needed to be able to get the cue right. And if I didn't, I personally hated that. But I can tell from your expressions that's very much me. But the things that went wrong bigly were so part of it being live. I mean, I remember were either of you there when we reunited a family of cats? A woman had got a litter of kittens, and they'd all gone to separate homes, but she had followed each one individually and done this wonderful sort of really glowing photo record of their lives for a year. Beautiful, in their separate houses all over the country. And then, as was the way with Peter, we didn't rehearse that, you know, because we wanted to keep the spontaneity. So we rehearsed with them all in their cat baskets. There were about 7 of them, and the mother cat, and the woman who'd written the book, and all the cat owners. And when we opened the cat boxes live on air, the cats completely forgot that they were brothers, and they fought unbelievably. But one of them went up into the lighting rig, and I don't know if it was truly, don't know if it, and also the woman who owned the cats who started this book was holding on to one of them and have stitches, because you know that thing, we've all done this, holding on to a reluctant animal.
Oh yes.
Most important, the animal stays in shot. That's it. That's all that matters. So she's holding on to this reluctant cat, and anybody knows that the back legs of a cat can pack a bit of a punch. But like I say, that, you know, because it wasn't my fault. I wasn't in charge of that. But the little tiny technical things, I used to think, oh, just get it right. That's it. That's your job. Just get it right. And it used to really bother me if I didn't.
What about you, Peter?
I used to try and do that, get it right, but I wasn't so good at that. No, I think the first thing I remember, and this is not really going wrong, but it's sort of the situation going wrong, was when the first expedition I did was to Japan, and we ended up going to a sumo camp, you know, and it was a ridiculous idea. A little frail blue-pitted presenter fights a huge sumo wrestler, you know, and they used to wiggle they had to take your clothes off and put the stuff on. They used to wiggle their little finger at me. Terrible abuse before we even started filming. But the day before this camp, which they take very seriously, they had an Australian film crew, and this crew had abused them, really, made fun of them in their nappies, and you know. So once I turned up, they decided they were going to give me what for, and they did. And they hit me with bamboo sticks, and everybody wanted to walk out. And I thought the only way out of this is to really fight, you know, and say, no, I'll keep going. Of course, it was wonderful because I did kind of win them over in the end. I did actually take a lot of, I mean, I was beaten up and bleeding from every part of my body, but I kept fighting, and because it made such a great film, and that's the part of it I enjoyed. But I suppose that could have gone wrong if we'd have left and didn't carry on.
But that was often the way, wasn't it? That people have a certain expectation of you, particularly as the boy presenters, but you wouldn't be able to sustain things. And actually, of course you could, both of you could. You know, you were very physically fit, you were very strong, and also you had amazing energy and enthusiasm. Remember, we did a film in Topsom with the Marines when they've done their first training, which I think lasts about 8 weeks, during which time they don't leave the base at all. Their first taste of freedom is to do the mud race across the estuary of at low tide. Yeah. So they sent me, and the presenter at the time was a lad called Michael Sundin, who was probably shorter than me, and I'm not a tall woman. Quite built, you know, quite built. Anyway, they sent Michael.
He was fit, really fit, Michael.
Yeah, he was really fit. And of course, all these Marines took one look at Michael and just thought, I don't think so. And of course, what they didn't know, because you know, nobody's done any research here, is that he had been an Olympic athlete. He was an Olympic trampolinist. So of course he left them all for, well, not dust exactly, for mud in this. But there was that expectation of, you know, oh, you're off the telly, you're a bit soft, you know, and all of you actually had that streak of something like, okay, I don't have to win this. I'm going to do the best I can, which was always really effective.
Maybe. I think I was scared, actually. I think I was.
You're scared on the windmill.
Oh, I was very scared of the windmill. Well, that was just the most bizarre thing. Everybody talks about that windmill, and I turned and nobody told me that that's what was going to happen. I was told.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, but and it came from nowhere because I turned up, and I remember I'm doing this interview with the miller talking about how you make bread and the windmill, all the questions, and I heard all these chains and rope, and looked outside, and a whole team of safety officers from the BBC had turned up. And I said, why are they here? And somebody said, oh, well, they're preparing for, we're going to be filming here for something else, for a drama series. I mean, they actually told me that. I said, oh, can they be a bit quiet? And then I went outside and I was approached by this safety guy saying, are you all right with this? I said, with what? He said, well, you know, we're doing this. And they didn't tell me, because they knew if they told me, I'd have probably said no, but, you know, you do it and you look back.
That shows how late on you joined the programme, though, Mark, because we didn't have anyone doing safety.
No, well, of course, during my time on Blue Peter was that terrible event on, was it the Late Breakfast Show with Noel Edmonds?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, right.
The bungee jump went wrong.
Everything changed after that. You're right.
Everything changed from that moment, yes. So anything we did, I mean, it became ridiculous. You know, if you just had to stand on a chair in the studio, 14 safety officers would turn up. So it did get a bit silly, but actually, for me, it was probably a really fortuitous thing.
Yeah. No,
do you think it would ever work on television, on mainstream television? When I say mainstream television, I mean BBC One, BBC Two. Would it ever work again? And do you think there aren't programs really for not just for kids, but for sort of under 20s on BBC One, on BBC Two? Somebody sent me a question today. They're writing a book about the lost generation, or you know, the people under 30 who are not watching the mainstream channels. Yeah. Netflix and
well, it changed, didn't it? There was such a proliferation of channels, of content, and it all became so international that it ceased to be colloquial, and you could look at anything anywhere. And I think that oddly during the pandemic, that strange sense of community has become a lot more powerful again. And you know, it's almost, I'm not saying it's like a Blue Peter program, but you do people are doing things together in the aids of other people, and often that's certainly a theme during the appeals, that you know, you got people to do things, make things, and collect things to raise money for other people who are less fortunate, both here and abroad. So there's the BBC started that stuff with Blue Peter. There wasn't much of that going on. All the appeals that came after that, it mimicked that principle.
So do you think
sorry, Mark, do you mean a sort of grown-up version?
Well, no, I was just thinking, basically, is it a shame that children's programs like Blue Peter were put onto a separate channel? That's there, and we were suddenly watching things like The Weakest Link, which that Blue Peter,
which I won, so that's fine.
Of course you did.
But only just.
I beat Val. She's never forgiven me. I'm not sure, because I think part of the reason people hold it to their hearts in the way that they do is because it goes with that feeling of safety and familiarity and repetition and adventure and being introduced to things. And Blue Peter, you know, it is now on a digital channel, has managed against the odds to hold on to that. But it'd be interesting to know, if you ask kids in 20 years' time, whether they're all as familiar. Because to be frank, you know, to our generation, you don't have to explain what the programme is really. And I used to find it, I'm sure you did as well, coming from an acting background, you know, you say, well, what's your job? And I say, oh, I'm going to be in the misanthrope. And they go, what's that? But, you know, you only ever had to say Blue Peter and everybody understood straight away, which I found very relaxing. But I don't know now whether we're handing that legacy on. I don't know whether they'll find a way to sift through to things that unite them in the way that Blue Peter does. Because whether you watch it or not, and more people did than say they didn't, I think it unites a whole generation right up until 15 years ago. So the answer to your question, I don't know is the answer. But I don't know whether things have changed too much to hold that really tight little knot of familiarity.
But I mean, I was watching Primates, which has just gone out recently, which I don't know, supposed to be a grown-up show, but it's certainly, to me, a kid's show, watching Primates with Chris Packham's being Johnny Morris, talking about them cutting into shots of these extraordinary creatures. And of course, the technology now is so brilliant. I can't see a child of 1 to a person of 101 not being entertained by watching, you know, creatures similar to us, only a lot more hairy, smaller, bigger, larger. But, you know, those primates are just like us, you know, and they are in so many ways about family and community and love. And it's extraordinary. And I mean, to me, you couldn't have shot that in the old days. And to that, so I think the sometimes that telly is seen as a bad, you know, it's not like it was, therefore it's not as good. I think there's some extraordinary stuff, imagery that goes on.
Absolutely. And I always defend children's television to the nth, because I don't think there's any less energy or enthusiasm than there was. You know, when you meet people now who want to put programs on, their route might be more circuitous, there's less money, there was never much, but they still really want to make programs for children. And I think the quality is phenomenal, actually. The cartoons are brilliantly written, the animations are top notch. And those sort of programs, you know, there's a series where a girl goes and, well, she's investigating wildlife, basically. What she's got is the most phenomenal footage, but she's still doing it in the same kind of let's have a look way, which is very beguiling. But yeah, I think it's in a pretty good place. It's just there's so much.
Peter, do you think it opened doors for you as an actor? You've done so much, particularly on stage, wonderful shows. Do you think it helped you profile-wise, or do you ever think, actually, had I not done Blue Peter, I might have been doing a little bit more stuff, or more telly, or films? Or
it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell, isn't it? I mean, it's nice to have just kept working most of the time until now, and doing reasonably interesting things, and being surprised by things, and sometimes doing things for not very much money because you really want to do it. So I don't think it's killed my acting career. There's a chance that, you know, if I'd stuck at just being an actor, I could have, you know, be driving a taxi or be a superstar. You know, there is a chance effort in it, but being an actor is about graft and is a bit of a muscle, and I kept the muscle going and kept the creativity going in different forms, and I've enjoyed it for that. So I don't really think, oh, if only I'd have stayed an actor, I could have done this, I could have done that. I think it's been good. I've been lucky.
And Janet, was there any part of you that actually wanted to act more? Because it just seems that your career just carried on. It's just taken you to places that you probably never really thought about or even planned.
No plan at all. Although if I hadn't done Blue Peter, I would definitely be like a dame of the British theatre, no question.
There's still time.
I'm not, by nature, I'm not someone who looks back and undoes things in my mind and thinks, what if? And I had no doubts about doing it at the time, and I've never had a scintilla of regret since, because I knew at the time, I mean, after all, I wasn't a kid myself. You know, when I joined the programme, I was probably a lot older than most of the presenters. I was already 28, plus I had a child already. So I kind of knew that nothing would ever be that big again. You know, I was joining a massive programme, and for the time I was on it, it would support me and include me in that massiveness, and that when I left, you know, just bring the next presenters in. So I was under no illusions at all. And I think that probably saved anything like, what about my acting? Because I've always had a kind of, well, let's see, you know, I kind of put myself there and thought, well, this is fun for a while, and then let's see what happens next. And luckily, I haven't ever had one of those, by the time I'm X years old, I must have done Y, which is just as well, as well, because it's been a continual surprise, pretty much.
And I think that when you look back a couple of years when we did the Edinburgh Festival and we did that play, which all three of us played, along with Tim Vincent and Peter Purvis, and what was joy apart from working together and having a lovely time. It was just joyous when people came up to us and they were so thrilled to see us. They would talk about stuff that actually I'd forgotten really. And it's moments like that where you think, oh, this is really great that the show's given so much pleasure to people. Yeah,
and when you think that a lot of the audience in Edinburgh, first of all, aren't actually even English TV viewers, so they're just tapping into something which is part of childhood but not theirs, and a lot of the audience had not seen us. A lot of them had never seen John Knows. And yet, every time we showed one of his amazing films and then Peter Purvis spoke about him, everybody flipping cried. So it just shows you we're part of a bigger thing than just a programme, aren't we?
Yeah. And friendship is what it's all about. And we're great mates. And we always, when we see each other, we just pick up from where we left off. It's just great. And actually all of us, when all the presenters get together, there's even if you didn't work with those presenters, there's just something.
I know. It was funny, wasn't it, when it was the 60th and we were all united. Pretty much everybody was there, weren't they? Infirmity allowed. I can't remember how many presenters that is, but anyway, lots. And we were all gathered together for that programme, which was going out live. And I kept thinking, how are they going to stop everyone talking? Because
they never can.
All the time.
Yes. All trying to top each other with the best gag, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's Blue Peter showbiz.
Anything in particular that you really want to do now, Peter? Anything you'd like to do?
Yes, I did. I was talking to my daughter, who's now a singer, and she brought me a lovely book for my birthday about Sondheim. And I've often wangled Sondheim songs into pantomimes, which is often, sort of like two worlds should never meet, really. I even did the ghost gag with a song from, On the Steps of the Palace, which infuriated Sondheim beyond belief. But no, being a musical theatre person like you, Mark, I kind of, I'd love to do a Sondheim, as simple as that, really.
Gosh, me too. You have, Mark. You've done that. You're lucky.
Yeah, I did Company, which was...
I remember it was great.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten that.
Production. Yeah, Sondheim, just so special, isn't he? And because he writes songs for actors. So, you're kind of halfway there.
Janet, you'd like to do that, Will? I mean, I'm not surprised that Pete wants to do it, but Janet,
I'd love to do that. I would love to do that, yeah.
Let's do it. Was a three-hander Sondheim we could do? Juxtaposition. We could do it in a Blue Peter set, but just sing the Sondheim songs.
You could drive a person crazy. You could drive a person mad. Do 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 do. That's a trio. We could start with that.
That one is, yeah. But that's yeah. He's still alive. Let's get him to write it. Come on, Steve.
Yes.
Listen, it's just we could literally go on for hours. We could just talk for hours. I do hope people have enjoyed this conversation, listening to us. Those people who've never seen Blue Peter, well, you kind of know a little bit about what it's about now. We had a great time. Thank you, both of you, for joining me. And
yes, it's been lovely, Mark. And if anybody can spare a few copies.
any words of encouragement for people in our profession, not just performers, but of course, theatre technicians, industry professionals. Any words of encouragement or in this time?
Yeah, I think you've got to hang on, really, especially if you're young, because if there's any professions where there's sometimes a lot of fallow periods, that's how you learn, tenacity and the graft to stay in the game. I mean, this is exceptional because everyone's not working, but slowly stuff will come back, and in some ways it teaches you to be very creative and productive yourself, and stand on not your own 2 feet, but not rely on other people to do things for you. And if you have an idea, try and do it in a small way, and then maybe when somebody wants to employ you, say, well, I did this, and I did that for my own back. So I'd hang in there.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Because there's a tradition, isn't there, in a theatre that it's never left dark, literally dark. There's always one light left on. And in theatres all over the country now, there is still a single light on the stage. And that light is still waiting, you know, and the light in you cannot be extinguished by a few weeks of this or anything that happens. It's going to make actors more adaptable. I think it's going to make them resilient, actually. But those two things, those two qualities, have always been required. They're not new things. All the things that made us think in a profession where you're constantly told, well, most people are out of work. I suspect, like me, I just thought, well, poor them, because you have to believe it's going to be you, and it's still going to be you.
Yeah, great words. Thank you so much, both of you. So, of course, if you have enjoyed this, I hope you have, and you stayed with us all the way through. Try, if you possibly can, to hit the donate button and just think about people in our industry who are having a bit of a bad time financially right now, and just give whatever you can. But anyway, thank you for watching. Big thank you to my great mates, Janet Ellis and Peter Duncan. See you both very soon.
See you, Mark.
None of this virtual stuff, a proper, the real thing. The real thing.
Elbows.
See you very soon. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Thank you so much for watching that conversation. If you've enjoyed it, please go to the Acting for Others website, which is actingforothers.co.uk, and hit the donate button, which will take you immediately to the Just Giving page. And please give as little or as much as you possibly can to help those performers and people in the industry who really need your help financially right now. Thanks a lot.